Ms. Wozniak?
Mr. Speaker, on the bill.
On the bill, Ms. Wozniak.
This topic is something that I think has touched all of us very, very deeply. We're all very much so affected by it. Clearly, when we're talking about abortion, this is something that cuts very deep. The implications are absolutely huge. For women, I've heard the heart-wrenching stories of the effects of abortions. I've heard the stories of the situations that they found themselves in. Poverty. They knew they had very, very little options. And they knew the unfortunate circumstances. But I must say that two wrongs don't make a right. And just because an unfortunate situation may have led to that, doesn't mean that they then can go and make another tragic mistake. We've heard over and over about hypocrisy and about the rights of women. But I find it mind-boggling that these comments can be made that we're here to protect the right of women, but yet completely ignore the life of the baby. I don't understand how that piece can be just completely pushed aside. In this house, when a child is born, we expect parents to have responsibility for their children and obligations. But yet, before that child is born, it seems like it's all off. It seems as though we want it where it's only about the woman and not about that unborn baby. And to me, that is just so utterly disturbing. And where we're putting our concern. We've seen bills come to this house about cats and dogs. We've seen so many bills come to this house about issues from a large variety of matters. But on this bill, we have something that's very, very important. I just would like to make that point that this is about the life and possible death of our unborn babies. And so for me, I will be voting against this bill.
Read the last section.
This act shall take effect on the 30th day.
Clerk will record the vote. Mr. Ramos to explain his vote.
Mr. Speaker, I support this bill for many of the reasons that my colleagues brought up. I won't repeat them, but I do want to say that I do respect my colleagues who, for religious reasons, are opposed to this. And certainly, I could understand it. I could understand the religious reasons why they would be against it, and I'm not offended by that debate or their particular reasons. That's a civil debate. We all vote the way we're going to vote, and the chips fall the way they may. What I truly am offended by is to itemize this by race, to insult women of color, where the only reason to even break it down in that manner would be to make the point that people of color, women of color, have certain predispositions. That does not belong. That reaches a new low in this body here. I'm truly ashamed of the discussion that took place today and how this is going to be perceived by the public. For that reason, it's a sad day. This was a tragic and regretful debate. I will vote in the affirmative.
Mr. Pichardo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to explain my vote. Just very quickly, I've always been a proud member of this legislature. We have our disagreements, we have our heated discussions and our debates, and we can have our disagreements very civilly. I want to add my comment to my colleague who just previously spoke. There is a way of conducting debate that does not offend an entire race of people. And we need to make sure that we are cognizant of that. It was incredibly offensive, and please, I ask my colleagues that when they speak on any of these issues, regardless of how emotionally charged they are, that they're very careful in the language that they use. Because one set of women is not predisposed to have abortions over others. I do not agree with that assessment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll be voting in the affirmative on this bill.
Ms. Peoples-Stokes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to explain my vote. I want to thank the sponsor, as I have for the last several years, for introducing this legislation that allows us to codify a position that's important to a lot of women, and quite frankly, many men in this state as well. I have said this in the past, I'll repeat it. I have a 19-year-old grandson, and I remember vividly when his mother brought to my attention while she was in college that she was actually expecting a child. My first thought was that this is not a good time for that, but it is what it is, and we'll just have to raise a baby. Now, I know that one of her girlfriends, a few of them actually, had already previously considered the opportunity to have an abortion. I literally prayed that she would not make that choice. And thank God she didn't, because he's a healthy young man doing very well at Monroe Community College. But on the other hand, Mr. Speaker, if she had made that decision, I would have supported her. I would not make it for myself. I would not encourage anyone to make it for themselves. But I'll tell you one thing for sure, is that everyone should have the right to make that decision on their own. I'm grateful to live in a state that gives us that opportunity. I appreciate anyone who is ever concerned about the life of people of color in this country that has been horrific from beginning to end. I appreciate that concern, but I will say, Mr. Speaker, we don't have the right to impose our religious or personal beliefs on other people. We didn't come to this body swearing on an oath that we would protect our rights, our moral constitution, our religion. We didn't swear to that. We swore to support the people of this state. And there are many people in this state who would like the opportunity to choose for themselves an abortion. And I think we should comply with that. And because of that, Mr. Speaker, I remove my request and I vote in the affirmative.
Ms. Bashad.
Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to explain my vote. I rise to support this bill. I want to thank the sponsor this bill which codifies with the federal law of Roe versus Wade, and also gives proper measures in keeping a woman from any harm. Now, earlier there was a comment that was made that I certainly have to comment on from a white male on the other side, which was very derogatory and very insulting to every single woman here, including black women. And these comments were inferring that black women having the right to choose is a form of genocide. This is incorrect, insulting, it was racist, and
Mr.
sexist.
Cole, why do you rise?
Mr. Speaker, I realize that there's a tremendous amount of motion going on throughout the chamber on both sides of the aisle. I get it. I understand it. I'm imploring you, for all of us on both sides of the aisle, to ask anybody that's going to explain their vote to speak on the bill in chief, and let's not get into what was said or wasn't said at this particular junction in time just because of the nature of the level of emotion in the chamber. I don't think it's productive, I don't think it's helpful, and I don't think it's going to change anybody's vote other than stir additional emotion. So all I'm asking, Mr. Speaker, that is control of the chamber, that you ask if someone's going to, why they're voting yes for the bill or no for the bill, that limit their comments to that fact.
Thank you, Mr. Cove. And we are explaining our votes, not
I am
commenting
explaining my-
on the debate.
And I am explaining my vote. And so when I think of this bill, I do agree with my colleague, Charles Barron, that, okay, I withdraw that. I do agree with my colleague that when we are debating this bill, some may use unrealistic statistics just to comfort their arguments. But when we're talking about Black Lives Matter, where are we when we are talking about segregations in our public schools, or gun violence in our neighborhoods, or, Mr. Speaker, the disparity in our income wealth? So this has nothing to do with black women. This has to do with women, all women having a choice. So again, I rise to thank our sponsor for putting this bill forward again, and we're going to continue to vote and support it, and I will continue to vote this bill in the affirmative. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to explain my vote. First, I want to commend the sponsor who has acquitted herself admirably again in a difficult debate. This is a critically important bill. It is something that New York State needs to be a leader in. As some of you may know, I spent a number of years providing counseling services to women who are undergoing abortion procedures. I have held the hands of white women, black women, Latinas, and older women, younger women, women with children, women without children. These are not easy decisions, and we are insulting and denigrating to women when we make the assumption that these are not important and difficult decisions. I support this entirely, and I will be voting in the affirmative. Thank you.
Ms. Simon in the affirmative. Mr. Abernathy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this legislation. This legislation on its face is quite simple. It adopts as New York State law what is today the federal law, the constitutional rights of women as enunciated by the United States Supreme Court. As the attorney for an organization that protected women's rights in Westchester County for over 18 years, I heard the stories of what it was like in the old days when women were prevented from getting the medical treatment that they needed, the horrific stories of coat hangers and back alleys, and the bloody deaths that women suffered. So I am very pleased that in our modern society, we allow women to make the choices that they have a constitutional right to make, and that they can get the health care and the medical care that they deserve. I find it anachronistic and somewhat outrageous that we have provisions of the penal law that make some of these rights illegal, or the exercise of some of these rights illegal. This legislation solves that problem and states that New York recognizes the constitutional rights of women as enunciated by the United States and Supreme Court and enacts them as New York law. Therefore, I vote in the affirmative.
Ms. Harris.
To explain my vote, no, I'm just going to quickly, just for the women that are here and to the probably the one or two women that are listening that are right now making a choice, I'm just going to take a little piece of this poem just so we can, just for the women. You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness, but still like air, I rise. And that's what we have to do today. I rise, I rise, I rise. And we have a choice. And I continuously heard both sides say, I believe. I believe. That's what I believe means. A choice. Because when you believe something, you have a choice of what you're believing in. So I vote in the affirmative, and today I rise.
Mr. Goodell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recognize that in the big picture, my life is not that significant to the world, but it means the world to me. And I'm honored to be here reflecting my views. We treat the unborn child as though their life isn't significant, but I can assure you their life is very significant to them. This bill dramatically expands the availability of abortions in the last trimester, which is that time period when medical experts generally agree that a child is viable outside the womb. We have virtually no restrictions on abortion in the first 2 trimesters. As a legislature, I think it's important that we do our very best to balance the rights and interests of those who can speak and do speak with the least articulate who aren't here to speak on behalf of themselves. And so for that reason, I will be voting against this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Blake.
Matthew 7:1 says, judge not that ye not be judged. And when we're deciding on why I'm so supportive of this, you can't be selective in when you make decisions on when you think someone should have a choice or not, and then try to use faith and scripture as the rationale behind that. So we shouldn't judge why someone makes a decision. You don't know what that woman is going through, what choices she is having, what she is having to assess. And when we continue to try to make it seem like the woman is wrong and not caring about the child, how dare you judge them for that decision? Now, to the next step, Mr. Speaker, I clearly have been supportive of the bill, but I would be remiss as a black man to have someone actually compare abortion to African-American genocide is absolutely deplorable and despicable in all regards. And the reason why that is related to my vote is because I need us to appreciate the collective impact of what we're saying to others. To the Native American community, to those in the Holocaust, to Cambodia, to Darfur, to Rwanda and Bosnia, who did experience what that word actually is. Do not belittle your sentiment on this bill to hundreds of thousands of people who lost their lives. It is about someone having a right to choose. Do not allow scripture and your personal belief to be the reason why you oppose that. And I support this because at the end of the day, how dare I judge someone else? It is about the woman knowing what's best to do what's for her. I proudly support this bill.
Mr. Gant.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Allow me to explain my vote. Debbie, Mr. Glick, let me thank you very much for putting this bill forward. Mr. Barron, let me thank you for having the guts to speak up. Mr. Speaker, I heard those comments about genocide here tonight and how it's bad for black people to have the opportunity to have an abortion. Well, I've had the experience of having two of my friends having court hanger abortions and dying from that experience. I think we ought to always err on the side of safety when it comes to this abortion act. None of us want to see people have abortions, but unfortunately those kinds of things do happen. It bothers me when I hear people speak to me as a man of color about what's good for me and the people who I represent. I'm also very bothered by the fact that people will come in and tell me that all to calm down and cool off, while other people are allowed to speak freely and represent their interests in this House. I submit to you and to the Speaker and the Majority Leader that we all ought to have the opportunity to speak our piece as long as we're not attacking anybody else. Let me suggest to those who are here and those who have their side of the story to tell that I'm always appalled. My office is right from here to the pillar from a Right to Life organization. I want to tell you that sometimes I was ashamed and I quite often got very upset of the pictures that were shown to young black kids as they walked down the street. But when they had their own kids come to that neighborhood, those same pictures were not on display. So we have a right as everybody else to do that which we believe is the right thing for us to do. Don't sit up and chastise me for what it is I believe. You have a right to believe in religion and right to life and all the rest of it. But don't tell me and my community that we don't have a right to get the health care that we need. And that's where I look at this issue. And again, Ms. Glick, thank you very much for putting this bill on the floor. Mr. Speaker, I withdraw my request and I vote in the affirmative.
Thank you, Mr. Gant. Ms. Richardson to explain her vote.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. I rise today as a woman. I most importantly rise today as an African-American woman. And let the record reflect that I'm not going to speak from emotion, but I'm speaking from a point of knowledge. And I was deeply offended at the statements that was presented here today with fictitious statistics that insinuate that African-American women have abortions more frequently than women of other races. Let the record reflect that white women have abortions, Asian women have abortions, people from all nations have abortions, and it is a woman's right to choose. So I stand here today as an African-American woman, deeply offended, but I stand here today for all women and their rights. And so with that, Mr. Speaker, I withdraw my abstention and I vote in the affirmative. Hold on. And I just hope that in the future, where we have such conversations, that respect is shown to everyone in this chamber. Because I never get up and disrespect anybody. I had to literally walk outside of the chamber because of the statements that was made to just compose myself. So with that, I vote in the affirmative.
Thank you, Ms. Richardson. Ms. Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to vote in support of this legislation and to thank the sponsor for her longtime leadership on this issue. This debate, if nothing else, showed me why this legislation is necessary in New York. That women's rights and that reproductive rights and that our health is at risk in New York. I've spent my entire life as an advocate for women and girls, and I am highly troubled by the message that we are sending to children, that we're sending to girls, if we can't support this, that they can't grow up in a world where they can make choices about their own bodies. I think it's essential that we let our girls growing up today know that we care about them and we care about their future and that we care about their ability to make their own choices. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Ms. Robinson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. As I listened to the discussion, I thought about my ancestors, those women who were in slavery, those women who were raped and ravaged without having the right to make a decision. They had children that were born out of wedlock. They were then sold. So when we talk about the value or talk about human life, let's talk about those that were sold for economic reasons in this country. And so I stand today as my sisters have stood because these women could not stand up. They had nothing to say. And so therefore, they could not make a decision on their own bodies. So I stand today to make that decision for them for the time that they were unable to, and I vote in the affirmative.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Butler.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. You know, I think in the heat of the emotion of this debate, I think we've gotten away from talking about what this bill is specifically about. Now, it's my understanding this is a preemptive measure because some believe that some wild-eyed zealots are going to take control of the legislative process or the Supreme Court and overturn Roe versus Wade. This is not about women's choice. That is already guaranteed in law. That is not the issue here. This bill, with a very subtle change in language, expands abortion allowable here in New York State. That's what the discussion should be about. That is what this bill is about. I think we've gotten very far off track with that. But that having been said, I think we need to be truthful with ourselves and with our constituents about what this bill is and why it is here and what it is expected to do. And I think you've already heard from some of my colleagues. I think it's fundamentally a political statement. It really doesn't change a great deal. And even if Roe v. Wade was overturned, I think there would be other elements in motion that would take over in that position. So I think we've spent a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of passion on this bill, which really doesn't do a whole lot of positive things, but it does subtly change language and expand abortion in New York State. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I'm voting no.
Mr. DiPietro.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise. You know, sometimes a good debate stirs us all up. And if we're not going to have a debate on this issue, I think all the other ones fall to the wayside. This is a very important issue to both sides. And it's been very spirited. I just like to tell people that, and I did tell one of my colleagues on the other side, it's nothing personal. I've tried to speak and I've tried to phrase all my speech. This is my most passionate issue. And I've tried to phrase it in such a way that it's my belief and it's my feelings, and I don't want to impose that, but I want people to know it. And I've been around so many different homes and groups and parents who have decided not to have an abortion, and they've not regretted it. They've got Down syndrome, mentally disabled, physically disabled. I've been at a number of these places. And I just want to say I've heard two words today a lot: choice and respect. I've got a couple bills called the sonogram bill and the pain bill. If this is truly about choice, then the woman should be given a choice to see them. There's no harm. And respect, I'll have more respect if those bills are put through. And I was just given this text about 20 minutes ago, and I'll read it to you. Someone who was watching this debate. My Carissa was both born with hypoplastic left heart syndrome and Rubinstein-Taybi syndrome. She died at 1 week old. It was incredibly hard. We knew it would be. We have no regrets. For that, I'm going in the negative. Thank you.
Ms. Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I listened to the debate, I was in my office holding my 4-year-old child, putting her to sleep. And I thought about how lucky she is to be able to be 4 years old and walk and speak amongst people whose sole responsibility is the well-being of our state and our constituencies. I think about how people say, she speaks well. She's very cute. She is afforded opportunities that so many other children will never have. And I think about how lucky she is, but more importantly, how lucky I am. But at 17 years old, I was pregnant. And I wanted to go to college. And I wanted to be an actress. And I wanted to be a lawyer. And I had a mother who spoke to me about circumstances that I was putting myself into, and also a number of other colleagues. At that time, I chose to have an abortion. I wanted to have a child after that, and I was so afraid that I would never be able to have children again until I got my 4-year-old. But even still, I concern myself with, what about all of the other children who are growing up in this society and they don't have a chance? They're fighting gun violence each and every day of their lives. They're experiencing a situation where they're not making enough money to make ends meet. Or even a child who dies for wrongful death in a lawsuit. And we have to tell parents, I'm sorry, but the law doesn't look at your child because your child is a black child as having enough value. So I say to you today that it's a proud moment as a black woman who has had an abortion in her life, as a black woman who is a wonderful mother, that I am proud to vote in the affirmative on this very important piece of legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Glick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank my colleagues for their commitment to the proposition that women should have the right to control their own reproductive destiny. I think about some of the young women that I knew growing up before abortion was legal. Women in high school who disappeared. They disappeared because their family felt a certain level of shame, and they just disappeared from the neighborhood for some period of time, and then might resurface some years later in college or through some communication that they had gone on with their lives. I think probably that was because they had been sequestered somewhere, gave birth, and gave up the child. Not an easy thing for them when they're 16, 17 years old. And I think about the women who died. I think about the women whose lives were lost alone, frightened, dying, bleeding, in a motel somewhere or in some apartment. And I think that women have a right to make decisions about their own lives. I think that many women would prefer not to have an abortion. They have that right too. This is about safe, legal abortion that enables women to protect their lives and their health and nothing more. It doesn't require anybody to have an abortion, but it ensures that New York women will continue to have a choice about a decision that enables them to protect their life, their health, and whether or not they choose to be mothers or not. And that should not be in the hands of legislators. This should be in the hands of women. I withdraw my request and vote in the affirmative.
Are there any other votes? Announce the result.
Ayes 88, noes 44.
The bill is passed. Mr. Morelli.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd ask members of the Rules Committee to move immediately to the Speaker's conference room. The members of the Rules Committee.
Rules Committee, Speaker's Conference Room.
Mr. Morelli.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Do you have housekeeping or resolutions to take up?
We have both, Mr. Morelli. On a motion by Mr. Benedetto, the amendments are received and adopted. Page number 47, calendar number 555, bill number 9268, the amendments are received and adopted. On behalf of Mr. Godfrey, bill number 2211, Assembly Bill recalled from the Senate. Clerk will read the title of the bill.
An act to amend the public health law.
Motion to reconsider the vote by which the bill has passed the House. Clerk will record the vote. Clerk will announce the results.
Ayes 141, noes 1.
The bill is before the House and the amendments are received and adopted. On behalf of Member of Assembly Albananti, bill number 2125, Assembly Bill recalled from the Senate. Clerk will read the title of the bill.
An act to amend the Surrogate Court Procedure Act.
Motion to consider the vote by which the bill passed the House. Clerk will record the vote. Clerk will announce the results.
Ayes 142, noes 0.
The bill is before the House and the amendments are received and adopted. On a motion by Member Cook, page 5, Rules Report number 40, bill number 3090. Amendments are received and adopted. We have a number of fine resolutions. Without objection, we will take them up as all together. All those in favor say aye. Against, nay. The ayes have it. The resolutions are adopted. Mr. Morelli.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I now move that the Assembly stand adjourned until 10 a.m. Wednesday, June 8th. Tomorrow is a session day.
The Assembly stands adjourned.